Melvindale cop exposed hit with misconduct, assault and battery charges. Tonight we take you inside a story that will shake your belief in the badge and make you question the very people sworn to protect and serve. This isn't a story about a stranger in some faraway land. This is a story about a small American city and the man in uniform who thought his authority placed him above the law. But the shocking truth has now been dragged into the light, and it will leave you stunned from the first moment you hear what happened. And before we go any deeper, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications, because what you are about to hear is not just news, it is a wake-up call, a lesson and a story you will not forget. So grab your seat, because every 60 seconds in this video the story will twist, the tension will rise, and we promise you will be left hanging on until the very end. Melvindale, Michigan, a working-class city just outside Detroit, small, tight-knit and proud of its police department. For years residents looked at the officers in blue as the protectors of the community, but that trust would soon be shattered by one man, a cop whose actions painted a picture of abuse, arrogance and betrayal. His name was Officer Daniel Harper, and while to many in the community he was just another cop in uniform, behind the badge he was hiding a dangerous streak, one that was about to come crashing down in the most public way possible, because multiple charges, including misconduct, assault and battery, would soon follow. And what sparked it all might sound unbelievable, but let me slow this down for you, because this story is not just about crimes, it's about the cover-ups, the whispers in the community and the fear that spread when one officer decided he could get away with anything. Now stay with me, because you won't want to miss the moment when Harper's carefully crafted image starts to crumble right in front of everyone's eyes. In fact, what happened one night on a quiet street was caught on camera, and that footage would change everything. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's first understand who this cop really was. Officer Harper wasn't new to the force. He had served nearly 7 years in Melvindale by the time allegations started surfacing, and on the outside he looked like the perfect officer, firm, decisive, strong. But to those who had seen his other side, he was a man who used his badge like a weapon, a man who believed the rules didn't apply to him. And that's exactly where our story begins, with whispers about misconduct, small incidents swept under the rug, complaints written off by his fellow officers, until one night when everything exploded in a way no one could ignore. But before we dive into that night, let me remind you again to hit subscribe, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and stay with me, because every detail you are about to hear connects to a bigger truth, and I promise you by the end you will be asking yourself, how did this man stay on the force so long? The first complaint against Harper came from a local teenager pulled over for a simple traffic stop. What should have been a routine interaction turned into something far more disturbing. The boy claimed Harper shoved him against his car, used excessive force and left him bruised and shaken. When the family tried to report it, the complaint somehow vanished from the system. No record, no investigation, almost as if it had never happened. A chilling sign of what was to come. And here's where the story starts to twist, because that wasn't the only time something like this happened. Harper's name started to appear in hushed conversations in neighborhoods across Melvindale. People said he had a temper, others said he had a history of going too far during arrests. But the real bombshell was about to drop, and it would put his entire career under fire in ways he could never have expected. But hold on, because this is just the beginning. And if you think one bad traffic stop sounds troubling, wait until you hear what happened inside a local convenience store late one Friday night, and trust me, you do not want to miss that moment, coming up soon. But let's build the tension slowly, because to understand the gravity of what happened in that store, you need to know how far Harper's reach extended. He wasn't just a patrol cop, he was connected. He had allies within the department, people who looked the other way when his behavior crossed the line, and that protection gave him confidence, gave him power, gave him the belief he could do whatever he wanted and still walk away untouched. Imagine living in a community where the very person meant to protect you becomes the person you fear. Now picture this: a small family-owned convenience store run by an elderly couple, respected and loved by their neighbors. One Friday evening, Harper walks in, not as a customer, not as a friendly officer checking in, but as a man looking for trouble. What unfolded next would become the moment everything changed. But before we get there, don't click away, don't move, because this next scene will show you exactly why Harper is now facing charges of misconduct, assault and battery. It is the turning point, and it will leave you stunned. So keep watching, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss the rest of this unbelievable story. Here's what happened that night in the store. The couple's son had gotten into a minor parking lot disagreement outside, nothing major, just words exchanged. Harper, who happened to be nearby, intervened, but instead of de-escalating, he escalated. Witnesses say he stormed into the store, grabbed the young man by the shirt, slammed him against the wall and shouted threats, his hands on his weapon, his voice booming through the aisles, and people watching in horror, some recording with their phones. In that moment, Harper wasn't an officer maintaining order, he was a bully using fear and intimidation, and the video captured it. All those clips would later surface online, sparking outrage across the city. But the most shocking part is what happened after the video went public. The department scrambled to control the damage, but Harper denied everything. He called it Fake news, a setup, claimed the family and witnesses were exaggerating, and for a moment it seemed like he might escape consequences once again, but not this time, because the footage was undeniable. The bruises on the young man's arms, the shaken voices of witnesses, the timestamps, it all matched up, and this time the people of Melvindale were not going to let it slide. But hold on, don't get too comfortable yet, because the convenience store incident was only one piece of the puzzle. The real bombshell came when investigators started digging deeper, and what they found shocked even them. Records missing, complaints, altered evidence, tampered with. It painted a picture not just of one rogue cop, but of a system that had enabled him for years, and now the cracks were too wide to hide. So where did it all go wrong? How does a man like Harper climb the ranks while leaving destruction in his path? And more importantly, what would happen when the truth finally caught up with him? Stay tuned, because we're about to get into the night that sealed his fate, the moment that turned whispers into headlines and set the stage for his fall from grace. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. The night that sealed Officer Harper's fate began quietly in Melvindale. The streets were calm, the lights of corner stores flickered, and families were settling into their homes. But while the city slept, a storm was brewing, and that storm was about to break loose in the most violent and unforgettable way possible. Now, before I reveal exactly what happened, let me remind you to hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you're subscribed with the bell turned on, because each second of this story pulls you deeper into a reality that feels almost unreal. And trust me, the twist that is coming will leave you speechless. That night, Harper was called to respond to a disturbance call on a narrow residential street. Neighbors reported loud arguing, shouts echoing through the night, and possibly violence inside a home. Harper arrived alone, and that's when his mask of authority dropped, because instead of handling the situation professionally, what followed turned into a scene straight out of a nightmare. The family inside the house, a mother and her teenage daughter, never expected that calling the police for help would invite danger through their own front door. According to witness statements, Harper entered the home aggressively barking orders, his hand resting on his holster as if intimidation was his first weapon, not his last. And when the mother tried to explain the situation, Harper snapped, grabbing her arm, shoving her against the wall, leaving a visible red mark on her skin. The daughter screamed, terrified, and tried to intervene, but Harper turned his rage toward her as well, lifting her by the shoulders and slamming her down on the couch as if she were a criminal instead of a scared child. The neighbors heard the chaos, and several phones started recording through the windows. But here's the cliffhanger you don't want to miss, because one of those videos would later surface online and become the smoking gun that no lawyer, no department, no cover-up could erase. But let me slow down. Harper thought no one would dare challenge him. He was the cop in uniform, and he carried the authority of the badge. He believed his word would outweigh anyone else's, so he wrote his report, twisting the story, painting the mother and daughter as the aggressors, claiming they resisted his lawful commands and forced him to act in self-defense. A story so bold, so reckless, that it might have worked if not for the videos. But the real question you need to ask is, why did Harper believe he could get away with this? And the answer takes us into the heart of Melvindale's police culture, where loyalty often meant silence, where complaints disappeared, and where protecting one of their own sometimes came before protecting the people. And this is why you cannot look away now, because what I'm about to tell you will explain why Harper was allowed to spiral so far out of control without consequence. Harper had been flagged multiple times in internal reports, excessive force accusations, questionable arrests, even patterns of intimidation, yet each time those reports were quietly filed away, never reaching the public, never leading to serious discipline. And the longer he got away with it, the bolder he became. By the time of that house incident, Harper was no longer just misusing his authority, he was abusing it in ways that shocked even seasoned investigators. But don't blink, because here comes the moment that flipped everything upside down. One of the neighbors who filmed the incident was a young college student studying criminal justice. She knew the law, she knew the rights of citizens, and she knew what she saw was not policing, it was brutality. She uploaded the video to social media, and within hours it spread like wildfire across Michigan and beyond. Comments poured in, outrage exploded, hashtags demanding justice trended overnight, and for the first time Harper could not hide behind his badge, because the world had seen the truth. But if you think this was the end, you're wrong. This was only the beginning of a downfall that would unravel like a thread, pulling an entire fabric apart. And if you think the community was angry, wait until you hear what happened inside the department when this footage surfaced, because that part will stun you. So keep watching and stay with me until the end, because you won't believe the betrayal that comes next. Inside the Melvindale Police Department, panic erupted. Leadership scrambled, desperate to control the narrative. Some wanted Harper suspended immediately, others argued they should back him until the investigation was complete. But the tension split the department into two camps, those who believed in accountability and those who wanted to protect one of their own at all costs. And in that split, the truth about Harper's long-protected misconduct began spilling out like water from a cracked dam. Records once buried were suddenly dragged into daylight. Complaints that had been dismissed now resurfaced, paint a chilling Picture of a cop who had terrorized his community under the shield of authority. And here comes another cliffhanger, because one of those old cases involved a young man who claimed Harper assaulted him during a street stop years earlier, but the case was closed as unsubstantiated. Now with the new video showing strikingly similar behavior, investigators reopened it, and what they found was horrifying. The victim had photographs, medical records, witness statements, all ignored, all shelved, and now the department had to answer for why it had been buried in the first place. But the bigger question was, could Harper face prison time? Could a cop who had once been praised as a rising star now fall so far that he ended up behind bars? Let me tell you, the answer is more twisted than you think, but don't skip, because before we reach the court battles, the betrayals and the shocking testimonies you need to hear about the night Harper himself realized his world was collapsing. It happened only days after the viral video. Harper, driving home late at night, felt the stares from neighbors, felt the cold silence from colleagues who no longer trusted him, felt the weight of his own arrogance catching up like a storm he couldn't outrun. He knew investigations were closing in, but what he didn't know was that federal eyes were now watching too, because misconduct, assault and battery charges might just be the tip of the iceberg. Once the FBI stepped in, everything changed. And if you think this is just a local story, think again, because what investigators uncovered had ties reaching further than Melvindale itself. But that is a revelation we will come back to later. For now, picture Harper sitting alone in his car outside his house, the glow of his dashboard reflecting on his face, his hands shaking for the first time in years as reality sunk in. And here's where we leave you on yet another cliffhanger. What Harper did next will either shock you or make you believe. Justice sometimes has a strange way of working its course, so stick with me, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and prepare, because in the next part we reveal the decisions Harper made in desperation, the people he tried to silence, and the ultimate twist that not even he saw coming. Officer Harper thought he could outsmart the storm. He thought the badge would shield him forever, but the deeper investigators dug, the more lies collapsed around him, and the truth grew impossible to hide. He tried calling old allies in the department, begging for protection, but one by one they turned their backs because no one wanted to go down with him. And here's the first cliffhanger of this final chapter. Harper wasn't just facing local misconduct charges. Prosecutors were preparing a case that could strip him of everything: his career, his freedom, his reputation. And even those who once defended him now whispered that his downfall was inevitable. As the weeks rolled on, the case grew louder. National media picked it up. Protesters marched through Melvindale holding signs demanding justice. The city that once trusted Harper now looked at him as a symbol of betrayal and corruption. His mugshot spread across every news channel, a chilling reminder that no one, not even a cop, was above the law. But what really shook the community was the evidence piling up, complaint after complaint stacked high on the prosecutor's desk, each one telling a story of intimidation and abuse. The courtroom soon became the stage where Harper's double life would be laid bare for everyone to see. Now don't move, because what happened in that courtroom will leave you stunned. Harper entered the trial in a suit, no longer a uniform, his badge stripped away, his power gone. He sat at the defense table glaring across at the people who had once feared him. Witnesses lined up, mothers, fathers, teenagers, business owners, all telling their stories of how Harper used his badge like a weapon, each voice breaking through the silence of years of cover-ups, and the jury listening closer with every word. But the moment that left everyone gasping was when the teenage girl from that house incident, the one Harper had slammed on the couch, stepped up to the stand, her voice trembling but strong as she told the jury what happened that night. Her testimony matched the viral video, detail for detail, every bruise, every scream, every threat. And when she finished, the courtroom sat in silence, a silence so heavy you could hear hearts pounding. And Harper knew in that moment his fate was sealed. But stay with me, because this trial held one more twist no one saw coming. Halfway through the proceedings, a whistleblower from inside the department stepped forward, an officer who had worked alongside Harper for years. He revealed how complaints were buried, how reports were rewritten, how evidence was lost. He admitted that Harper was protected by a circle of silence inside the department. And when the jury heard that the case shifted from just one bad cop to a system that enabled him, the courtroom erupted in disbelief. The judge ordered order, but the damage was done. Harper was no longer just fighting accusations, he was now the face of a broken trust. But wait, here comes the next cliffhanger, because just when it seemed the trial couldn't get any more dramatic, Harper made a desperate move against his own lawyer's advice. He demanded to testify in his own defense. Standing before the jury, he tried to paint himself as the victim, claimed the city had turned on him, claimed the videos were misunderstood, claimed the witnesses were lying. But the more he spoke, the more he exposed himself, his anger boiling, his arrogance dripping through every word, until even his own defense team sat in stunned silence. Harper's testimony did not save him, it destroyed him. The jury saw not a man of honor, but a man drunk on power, unwilling to admit the truth. The closing arguments came swiftly. Prosecutors painted Harper as a dangerous man who betrayed his oath, who assaulted citizens, and who thought he could get away with it because of a uniform. The defense tried to salvage what they could, but the evidence was too overwhelming. And then came the verdict: guilty on multiple counts of misconduct, guilty of assault, guilty of battery. And as the words echoed through the courtroom, the City of Melvindale let out a collective breath of weight. Lifted, but justice was not over yet. Sentencing was next, and what the judge said that day would become a moment the entire nation remembered. Before I reveal it, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story, because what comes next is the powerful reminder we all need. The courtroom packed once more. Harper stood before the judge. The same man who once strutted through Melvindale in uniform now stood shaking in handcuffs. The judge spoke slowly, deliberately, reminding Harper of his oath, the duty he betrayed, the fear he caused, and the stain he left on his city. And then came the sentence: years behind bars, stripped of his badge, stripped of his pension, stripped of the power he once abused. Harper's fall was complete, but here's the final cliffhanger, because just when everyone thought the story was over, a new investigation opened, targeting not just Harper but the entire department. How many others had looked the other way? How many others had buried complaints? How deep did the rot go? The people of Melvindale demanded answers, and this time the spotlight wasn't moving until truth was found. The lesson is clear: when power goes unchecked, when loyalty becomes silence, when a badge becomes a weapon, the people suffer. But when the people rise, when voices speak, when evidence cannot be buried, justice finds a way. And that's why stories like this must be told. That's why you cannot look away, and that's why I need you right now to subscribe to this channel, share this video with friends and family, and hit that notification bell, because these stories are not just entertainment, they are warnings, reminders, and wake-up calls. The story of Officer Harper is not just about one cop, it is about accountability, it is about trust, and it is about the truth that always rises no matter how long it is buried. Harper's downfall may bring closure to some, but the bigger fight for justice continues, and you and I, we must keep watching, we must keep questioning, and we must never let silence protect the guilty. So stay with me, because the next story we tell may shock you even more, and you will not want to miss it.